Welcome back, and thanks a lot for staying with us. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the guest of the day. I am joined by an agriculture business analyst, Oyeleye, for discussion on the task ahead of the Minister of Agriculture. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Dr. Ida, can you hear me? Dr. Oyeleye, if you can hear me,
Yes.
I want us to start with the appointment of new ministers for agriculture sector. What's your view on this?
Can I hear the question again?
I want us to start with the appointment of new ministers for agriculture. We have Abubakar Kyari, and we also have Senator Aliyu Abdullahi. What's your view on this?
Well, clearly the positions have to be filled, and it's very early in the day to begin to talk about specific individuals. All we can say is now to look forward with optimism to see what their contribution will be in that sector.
All right. I also love us or like us to talk about the new name. I mean, before it was the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, but is now named as Agriculture and Food Security. What's the implication of this for the sector?
Okay. Well, definitely with time, the what I will call the nomenclature of ministries can change with time, depending on what policies the government of the day intends to.
Dr. Oyeleye, are you there?
So when we talk about food security, about aspect of getting a nation to be able to produce enough to feed its population, that's the way I want to look at it. Earlier, rural development had been a part of many. Okay, so that was what I was trying to explain before, we lost the contact. And I will say this by mentioning even the essence of, what is leading to this break in communication. Agriculture and rural development before was the name of the ministry. In other words, the development of the rural setting actually is very key to agriculture and food security. So, but I want to take this from the perspective of this issue of food security, which I believe must have a wider ramification. That's my thinking. And so I need to know a little more about what informs this. But I am thinking that bringing in new nomenclature, calling it food security instead of rural development, will entail a wider ramification, thinking about this rural development that has been dropped. And then, of course, we should be thinking about market. We should be thinking about issues of financing. We should be thinking about issue of processing. We should be thinking about storage. We should be thinking about logistics. I want to believe these are issues that have been brought into consideration here. So I think if you ask me, these are the things I consider as implications.
So after inauguration, the minister said the addition of food security will streamline the vision for the sector. How do you think this can be achieved by the minister?
Of course, we have to look at the sector holistically. By holistic approach, I want to look at it from the perspective of the interplay of the various factors of production, factors of the market issue. And then, of course, we want to look at input supply, which is very, very critical. And I think it's an area in this country where a lot needs to be done. And then, of course, we will have to be looking at the issues of climate change and the effect on production, and also the fact that, and I need to emphasize this, the generational change is very, very key to agriculture, because right now we need to do quite a lot to be able to attract and retain the younger generation into agriculture, because the people who have been involved in agriculture in the very recent past and up to the present are aging, and many of them are actually dropping agriculture for some other things because of their ability or strength to be able to carry on. So much has to be done when it comes to this. And I think in drawing up agenda for the new ministers, these are the areas I think we should be looking at. And I think we need to sound it very loud and clear that agriculture requires a lot more effort, a lot more input, a lot more finance. And of course, I need to talk about the issue of agricultural insurance, because without insurance, we will not be able to retain the younger generation in agriculture in Nigeria. Let me leave it at that for now.
So before we get to policies and all of that, you've talked about so much that needs to be done. So what do you think the new ministers should focus on in reviving the sector?
Okay. And so I've mentioned quite a few of them now, so I will just say by way of re-emphasizing and elaborating. For instance, the last I mentioned had to do with insurance, for instance. It's actually a component of Nigerian agriculture that is actually wanting. And I think there must be a deliberate effort in actually playing up insurance in Nigerian agriculture. And when I talk about insurance in Nigerian agriculture, I'm not talking about the way it's been done in the past 20 years or more, in which case it is domiciled within a government setting. It has not worked. And I think the private sector needs to be brought in to play a leading role here. Agriculture is business. And if it is seen as business, then of course the practitioners will take it more seriously. And by so doing, I want to talk about the fact that we should get the insurance companies involved in Nigerian agriculture. And then, of course, business models will have to be developed. And this will have to be done in partnership. Government can't afford to dictate, when it comes to this. Government must learn from the practitioner. Government must bring in ideas. Government must invite, competent, players to pull ideas together for the benefit of the country. So it's not the case of, the people in government know it or no. Actually, I would say the people in government know very little when it comes to issues like this. They must be able to bring in people from outside who will be able to harness information about, so many aspects of insurance. I don't want to go into the details now because, of some other things I want to mention. But I want to say that is an important aspect. Then, of course, our staple crops. We need to, emphasize to the new ministers that our staple crops need to be given a better attention. And I want to start by mentioning one, which I think cuts across the various parts of the country, which is corn, that is maize. Right now, if we don't take care, Nigerians' corn production is going to be in jeopardy. As we speak now, there is what we call fall armyworm that is ravaging, maize in Nigeria. And many people are recording very low outputs as a result. Those who don't have scientific background don't understand this. But those who have scientific background understand this, because people are just wondering why their maize crop is yielding very low. Some think it's fertilizer, some think it is because, maybe the rain is not falling and all of that as it should. It is not only those ones. Those ones could be part of it in some cases. But now there's this fall armyworm that has invaded Nigerian maize industry on the field. And there must be a national program to stamping that out. I don't want to talk about international politics that have to do with this because that will stir some other kind of discussion. But I want to say that when it comes to the staple crops, so I only emphasize maize here. I will not talk about some other commodities because of time. I would talk about the need for us to also examine something. The border closure with Niger Republic has a counterproductive effect on livestock agriculture. And when I say that, I want to talk about the fact that a bulk of the ruminants, that is cattle and sheep and goat that we consume in Nigeria, they are brought from Niger Republic. And the border closure has really definitely in this past couple of weeks negatively affected their presence in Nigeria. Many of the markets where these are traded near the border are desolate as we speak. And that will lead to a rise in the price of those beef and then sheep and goat meat in Nigeria in not too distant a future. So there must be a way of looking at that, except we have some other alternatives. So I want to say that also with emphasis. Now, I will want to also, recommend that this set of ministers should take the issue of flood emergency preparedness very seriously. The forecast we are having show clearly that this year there's going to be serious flood in many states, and particularly those states that are agrarian. And if care is not taken, a lot of farm products will definitely go to waste. That is one of the things. So efforts must be made to avert this. And where you cannot avert this, there must be a backup plan for what was done some 12, years ago in Nigeria, under Jonathan. The dry season crop farming must be given a great emphasis. It doesn't have to be, and since this is a political situation, people may now want to adopt what has been done in the past, for political differences. But
so, Dr. Oyeleye,
yeah.
I mean, we can all agree that agriculture used to be the mainstay of Nigeria's economy. But is it possible for the return of this in the country?
It is possible. It is possible because we have a lot more of what can make this happen today. A lot more scientific knowledge is at our disposal. Technologies, machineries for production, for processing, they are more at our disposal today, than, some 20, 30 years or even more ago. And then, of course, the fact that we have a greater population to feed, and we cannot always continue to depend on importation. That's another reason why we need to actually bring it back to the forefront. And that's very, very critical. A nation of about 200 million cannot afford to continue to spend billions of naira annually to import our staple food. It is not sustainable. And it doesn't make a nation great. So we need to focus more on agriculture, and it is it's doable. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And I think the subnational governments need to pay a lot more attention to this. Agriculture is actually in the concurrent list of our constitution, and states are supposed to take it very, very seriously. But everything is not even about federal government. But I think the subnational governments should work in partnership, irrespective of political differences. They should work with the national government to make sure that agriculture is practiced in the states of Nigeria. The only two states that are basically not so much agrarian in Nigeria are Lagos and Rivers State. And there are still some parts of those two states where there are rooms and provisions for agriculture. The rest are basically agrarian. So I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be possible. I think we really need to bring agriculture to the forefront. And like I said earlier, the working together of states and the federal government should be devoid of politics. That is the point. They must work together for a common purpose to feed Nigeria. If there is political will, I think we really can do it. And we can even export to other countries beyond Africa.
Yeah. So, I mean, some experts say the government alone cannot be blamed for the decline in agriculture, but also poor attitude of Nigerians to farming. How can governments make the sector attractive?
Well, the government actually shares a bulk of the blame of agriculture not being attractive, because the government takes the lead in policies. If government doesn't bring about the right kind of policy, of course, the people will be discouraged. Government has all the power to be able to regulate many things, and they have all the power to make policies and laws. If those things are not in place or they are not effectively implemented, of course, people will be discouraged. And that's the thing. So let me say it for emphasis that a bulk of the blame for the discouragement is actually on government. And that's why the government owes the nation the responsibility to actually formulate the right kind of policies and implement them. That is what is going to make people to be, interested. I worked with Dr. Akewumi Adesina. I knew how much interest was generated in this country because of, the emphasis on agriculture at that time. Many young Nigerians wanted to get into agriculture and so on and so forth. And that is why leadership actually plays a whole lot of role. And then, of course, the government has what it takes to be able to bring together various critical players. That is what we now, when they lead the way, then, of course, the individuals and, corporate organizations that we want to get involved in agriculture, we want to follow.
So another major problem is crop yield per hectare in Nigeria, which is low. I mean, records say Nigerian farmers still struggle to attain 4 tons per hectare. How can this be tackled?
Well, we have research institutes in this country that have worked on various crops and how their productivity can be improved. They have lots and lots of, reports, outcome of research work, collaborative field works in their kitties. All that the government needs to do is to draw upon this in various crops. For instance, I can tell you the production of cassava in this country per hectare had improved over time because of the research work that has been done. The production of rice, the same thing. The production of wheat has also improved in the past 1 decade in Nigeria. So what I would say is government should go to the research institute. Don't wait for the research institute to come to you. It shouldn't be the case that the directors of research institute will come to a minister's office and wait for 2-3 days and cannot see a minister. It's not a good way of actually helping people, because I saw this happening in the past. That's why I'm saying it. So the people in government should not feel too big as to come to their level. They should bring themselves down to the level of these people, and they should make themselves accessible. So we will be able to draw upon the knowledge base that is in all of these research institutes, universities of agriculture, and all of that. And we have 3 of them: Umudike, Makodi, and Abeokuta. They're there to serve the country, not only to produce graduates, but also to do research and to make these research results available. So let's draw upon their rich knowledge and skills. We will be able to do a lot with what they have. So that's what I can say.
But how important is advanced technology in tackling this?
Definitely, technology will. The first thing that comes to mind about technology is that it increases productivity, and that's one. Then 2, fine, let me break it down. The increase in productivity has many dimensions. For instance, if we apply technology, we will be able to. Technology also is actually, involved in the aspect of, soil enrichment, handling of, the weeds, and then killing of pests and all of those things. So if we put all of those things in place, of course, we'll be able to bring about a lot more produce from our farm. And then, of course, we will. If we aggregate on a national level, we will have better harvest. It can even force down the prices of food on its own. So technology, if it is applied consistently in a coordinated manner, I believe, of course, it will make a whole lot of difference. And in doing that, there are many farmers who cannot afford technologies, especially that can boost, production. This is where, again, the government needs to come in, not necessarily by providing some of these things, but by creating an enabling environment to allow the commercial providers to be involved. Because when we talk about this technology, the mind will go to things like tractors and some other things. It is not even the business of a government to do and import tractors. There are private establishments that are involved in this. Enable them, incentivize them, support them with the government might. They will do it. And then there are associations of tractor, owners and operators of Nigeria. Make them, to be able to perform their role without any let or hindrance. It will help a great deal. So these are the kinds of things I believe the government needs to do. It's not by getting directly involved. It's not by putting money into purchasing or, importing certain things. That leaves a lot of room for leakages, and that's also a temptation for those who exercise political powers. But it is the program, it is the kind of initiative that allows various players who can do it on a commercial basis that will help in this sense.
So, Dr. Oyeleye, how can government ensure year-round farming to avoid seasonal crop production?
Well, that's a good question, and I will answer this way. For instance, we talk about weather. I mentioned, the fact that there's the forecast, for instance, that there will be flooding. Now, if we have forecast and we disseminate the weather forecast, information at the state and federal level, and we promote these with the media, we will be able to get the farmers, small and big, to get themselves ready and prepared to avoid losses, right? And so that is one of the things that will have to be done. And then, of course, with this weather, we can inform farmers in the south and the north when to plant, and then when they will expect harvest, so that people will not go and plant, especially where they do not have all water supply or rain for much of the year, like in the core north of the country. So let me break it down this way. Like in the south, we have what we call bimodal rainfall. So with that knowledge, we know we can plant some crops twice in a year, and that will help to boost productivity if it is well supported policy-wise by government. Like I said, not only federal, but states have their own responsibilities and they have their peculiarities. So they should get seriously involved. Now, in another part of the country where rains fall for a very short period of time, like some part like Sokoto and Borno, as perhaps maybe for about 3 months of rainfall. Now, the emphasis should be placed more on irrigation. The only state that consistently does irrigation in the northern part of the country today is Kano State. Other states need to join. The various big rivers that are there, they should actually revive the irrigation system. To that extent, many hands that are idle during the dry season will be busy and crops will be produced and they will have excess. They will have a lot more money in their pockets and a lot more food in the market. And then, of course, more mouths will be fed. So government needs to look into this. And I think it's practicable too, only if there's a political will. And I think these are the things we need to lay emphasis on.
But now that we have a separate ministry for water resources, what impact can this have on irrigation farming?
Okay, well, separate ministry for water resources hasn't really achieved much in terms of what its name sounds like. I would expect that the Ministry of Water Resources will build on the work that have been done in the late 70s, early 80s. As we speak today, our river basin development authorities are comatose. They are near dead. And we should think about reviving them. One thing I would say here with emphasis is that those that came up with that idea had a vision for years into the future. But sadly enough, that is not being implemented now. So we actually need to look again at our River Basin Development Authority. And it's very, very key to food security in Nigeria. And then, of course, you talked about it as a separate ministry. It used to be part of Ministry of Agriculture in the past. Now, the fact that it is now a separate ministry does not mean that it will operate independent of agriculture. There must be this synergy. There must be this, exchange. There must be this working together for a common purpose, particularly for the sake of providing, water resources to support agriculture. Of course, I know that they also have roles in other areas, but when I'm trying to, narrow it down to agriculture here, they are supposed to even be, custodian of, technical knowledge about how water can serve agriculture in Nigeria. They're supposed to be consultants and advisors to the Ministry of Agriculture, so that at least, because water is very central, and there are many communities and individuals that cannot afford to provide water for themselves. So it must be done at such a level, at such a height, that at least seeing the need for, because I think, let me put it this way, we should see our needs for food security, our need for abundance of production of what we need to eat in this country, and then think about how much it adds to the economy. And then, get the Ministry of Water Resources to work alongside that vision that will now, trickle down to the policies and programs that will make them to work, together with the Ministry of Agri towards ensuring food security in this country. So, like I said, again, for emphasis, water resources should not be seen as a completely separate ministry that operates independent of agriculture. And that's the thing. And I want to say this too, among the ministers, sometimes this problem of contest. It shouldn't be. People who are appointed ministers shouldn't be operating as if they are rivals. They should see themselves as colleagues and collaborators and cooperators. And I think this is something that must be emphasized. Otherwise, the ego of being co-ministers will make some people not to look at what they should do for the country, but they will be emphasizing their status. And that does not help the country.
So, Dr. Oyeleye, how important or how crucial is agricultural data in all of this? Because for some analysts, they say for the government to make informed decisions, the minister or the government must embrace agriculture data.
Mm. Yeah, only magicians manage, organizations without data. Professor Peter Drucker says if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. So we really need data to work with. But this data will not come by guesstimate. It will come by systematic, outing. People should be on the field. I'm talking to you now from a suburban area. And so for being in the rural community, I'm able to see a number of things. And I can, tell about certain things, based on personal experience. So the people shouldn't sit in the high horse over there and think policies will just be, evolved and then figures will be cooked up somewhere. They need to go onto the field. And the thing is that a ministry like agriculture has a whole department whose job is, to gather information, but it must be made more proactive and more efficient. So to be able to, and of course, the data we had on so many areas of agriculture, commodities, crops, and then livestock and fishery should be harnessed. But then I want to make a point here. In doing that, figures gathered in the past 30 years cannot help us today. For instance, the last livestock census that was done in 1991. And you can imagine using 1991 data today. It will not help. And that was, contracted out to a consulting firm that time. But today we don't have any reliable, figure on livestock, particularly our cattle, sheep, and goat. Anything you find today is just estimate. And that is just extrapolation over the years. So people need to go on the field to assess what we have commodity by commodity, crop by crop in the area of crop, and then, of course, animal by animal. Poultry industry, which is about the biggest livestock sector in this country, in terms of, sectoral, sectoral activity that actually, is visible to the economy. They regulate some of the activities by themselves. They're able to generate a lot of, figures, from tailed chicks to the layers to broilers and all of that. The government needs to also work with the Poultry Association of Nigeria to be able to harness the information, that they have. But I want to also say for an association like Poultry Association of Nigeria to be able to open up, they would want to be sure that government is not trying to just get them to release information so as to be able to score political points or to, go to the press and say we are having this, when in actual fact the practitioners are not really, feeling the impact of the government. So if you want to gather information in such an area, in such a subsector like poultry, for instance, the practitioners must see the assurance that they are not going to be used for political purpose. They are going to be used to help the industry, to create jobs, to produce more meat, to produce more eggs, and then, of course, to also boost the country's economy. So, yes, data, very, very important. But
so
the people who want to talk about data must make it manifestly clear that they want to use it for real practical purpose, not for political purpose.
So some of the points you've raised will lead me to my next question. There is this argument that a Greek minister should not be armchair officer. How will you address the minister on this?
Oh, yeah, clearly. The minister should be on the field. That's the point. Once in a while in the office, but most of the time on the field. Because reports that come to offices are, in most cases, filtered, distorted. And so what people are getting, upon which they make pronouncements, are based on, distorted and, filtered reports, which will not reflect the reality on the ground. That's why the minister should be on the field. That's why the minister should see things by himself. The minister should pay unscheduled visit, unannounced visit to places, so that if you make an announcement, you are coming to this place, people will do window dressing. And you won't be able to get the right kind of information. So I agree, yes, the minister should be on the field, not for most of the time, not in the office. That's the truth about it. At the very best, since there's a minister and a minister of state, when one is on the field, the other one is in the office. Maybe if there's any need for urgent, meetings and some engagements, and want to receive official visitors and what have you. But most of the time, you'll be on the field. And when the one that is on the field comes back, the one in the office should also go out too. They should alternate their outing. And then, of course, they should work together. Again, it's very important. The struggle between ministers and ministers of state usually can play up. They need to work together in synergy. That's the point I want to make here. Otherwise, it's not going to make much of a difference. And there could be cold wars between two ministers, and all of that. So these are some of the things that actually also reduce their efficiency and their performance and their impact, as ministers. So definitely, they need to spend time out there.
All right, so let's quickly talk about fertilizer, highly critical for food production. How can government sanitize the process of fertilizer distribution to farmers?
The process of fertilizer distribution to farmers had been sanitized since way back 2012, 2014. It's just that it's changed again after 2014, and many of the things that were prevented within that space of time have come back. The fact is that fertilizer issue is not within the government ambit. Government should not be involved in fertilizer distribution. You shouldn't do it as a kind of largesse or favor. It is business. Let the producers, the distributors, do it like somebody goes to a shop. You want to buy Coke and buy and drink, and you pay. That is the way it should be. But as long as government continues to get involved in this, then of course it gives people an impression that government is, is a big father, big brother who will always bring, fertilizer in and then distribute to farmers. It does not help. At the very most, you talk about subsidy. It's very important. If developed countries subsidize inputs for production in agriculture, we cannot shy away from it. We also need to subsidize. But what I would say is that our subsidy should be well targeted and should be well informed. The subsidy shouldn't be done in a discriminatory manner. It should be done based on what we want to achieve. Who are the players here? If we have record, if we have data that has been systematically gathered and sorted out, then of course it should be easy to target those who should be targeted, but definitely not to use fertilizer as political.
All right, Doctor. So quickly, what more incentives do you think government needs to provide for farmers?
That what? I didn't hear the
What
question.
more incentives do you think government needs to provide for farmers?
Okay, fine. One of the incentives that government needs to provide for farmers is, for instance, we talk about information. It will surprise you when I talk about information as an incentive. Many farmers are very much oblivious of so many different things. Even in particular, market price. Market price is one of the things they are oblivious of. So the government should make arrangement. Again, not only at the federal level, at the state level too, there must be an arrangement that would ensure that, information, market information service, for instance, is readily available. So people can think about, when do I want to sell what I have? So that they do not go and give out, because usually there's this price fluctuation cycles in agricultural product. So if a farmer has an information, in his hand about market, he can decide, no, I'm not selling my product at this time. I will keep it till another time. Because when people flood the market with a lot of commodities or the same kind of commodity at the same time, the price drops precipitously, and that affects the fortune of those who produce. And then when those people who buy and hold realize that they are not so much in the market, then they release and then they sell at exorbitant prices when they don't have competitors. The real farmers that produce would be, the ones that are shortchanged. So that is one of the incentives that I think need to be provided for farmers, and that's very important. Then rural, and then that brings me back to the rural development. Many communities have poor roads. Many of them are not able to bring their produce to the market, even as short as 2 kilometers away. They can't move their produce.
Dr. Oyeleye.
Things get wasted.
Sadly, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Doctor. We're out of time. But, this is an ongoing conversation. I'm certain we will continue some other time. Thank you so much for coming on the program. I've been speaking with an agriculture business analyst Oyeleye tonight to discuss the task ahead of the Minister of Agriculture. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Goodbye.